All right, one of the greatest light heavyweights that we've seen compete in the UFC Octagon is without question Daniel Cormier, also one of the greatest heavyweights as well. DC, a standout wrestler, an Olympic hopeful, and just a hell of a fighter and a competitor. Also, one of the nicest guys that you'll ever meet. I love working with DC, so warm and friendly and very, very funny, but he's a man that you would not want to mess with. Listen, started off as Strikeforce, became the Strikeforce Grand Prix champion, heavyweight champ, beat some legendary names, Josh Barnett amongst those. Came over to the UFC, had a few fights at heavyweight, but then came down to 205 because of his friend, Cain Velasquez. Free Cain Velasquez as well. Let's keep that movement going. Thoughts are with you, my friend. Now, DC made a little bit of a headline this week because he's revealed that whilst he is very happily retired, if Dana White was to grant him a shot at the light heavyweight belt, then that is something that he might come out of retirement for. He said this week, and again, he said, I don't want to fight at heavyweight. He said, because I don't deserve that. I don't deserve a title fight. But he said, I said this when I retired. I said, I'm only going to fight for championship belts. But it's like, I don't deserve a championship fight. Stipe Miocic is not the champ. He beat me the last 2 times. I don't deserve a shot at the heavyweight title. If I was ever going to fight again, and which I don't want to, I would have to go all the way back to 205 pounds. And then he went on to clarify. He said, why? Let me tell you why. Because I didn't lose. Bit of an interesting take. We'll come back to that one in just a second. He said, I vacated the title whenever I didn't want to go back down there. When John Jones was going to fight Alexander Gustafsson. So because I vacated the title, now maybe there is some potential in this. Hey, Dana White, you think I could fight Yuri Prohaska for the title? Especially with your name recognition and what you've become outside of the fight game, then maybe there is some value in that. Now, we know DC was essentially undefeated at light heavyweight, but he did lose twice to John Jones. And now this is where it gets a little weird. And of course, DC is going to stick to his guns and say that he was undefeated because John Jones, as we know, it's the picograms. It's the failed tests, of not which there was one, there was many. Now, the reality is the first time that DC and John Jones fought, what a fight that was. What a tremendous display of mixed martial arts. It really was. That was like the highest level you'll ever see. But John Jones won a decision. And from my recollection, John didn't test positive after that fight. So that's where it gets a little murky with what DC's saying there. The next time they fought, it was in Anaheim. John Jones got the finish with that powerful head kick that he landed. After that, he did test positive. So there's 2 sides of the coin here, or 2 arguments that you can make. One side would be like, well, hold on a minute, he tested positive, and this is certainly where DC is standing, and I am leaning towards his train of thought here. He's saying, look, John Jones, he tested positive, okay? Just because he beat me one time before, he was definitely juicing the entirety of his career. You know, it didn't happen. And the next time they were meant to fight at UFC 200, he tested positive again there. So again, the more and more I talk about this, the more I'm leaning towards agreeing with Daniel Cormier. He did go on to say, he said, listen, I don't want to. I don't want to come out of retirement, but I would have to. I mean, if I had the desire to fight, and wanted to try and accomplish something great one more time, then that would require me going down to light heavyweight because there was just no fight at heavyweight. I don't deserve a fight at heavyweight. He says, hey, but if it ever happens, it better happen soon. I'm 44 years old in March, but hey, Randy Couture won the heavyweight championship at 45, so it's not impossible. So, very, very interesting to hear DC talking about that. I thought he was retired. I thought he was done. I thought he was moving on with the next phase of his career. He's got an acting project coming up soon. Obviously, commentating all the time. He has a wrestling academy. He has a lot of businesses. He has a bunch of barbershops. DC's a very, very successful man. I thought the fights were behind him. But still, there it goes. If there's an opportunity at 205, I mean, against Yuri Prohaska, Glover Teixeira was able to out-wrestle Yuri Prohaska. One would think that DC would be able to have a smoother path to victory because of his wrestling credentials. However, the only problem is making 205 pounds. Daniel Cormier, I love the guy. He's the best. He's hilarious. He's got so much knowledge. He's got so much weight.
'cause you know I'm all about that cake.
The guy's big. The guy's fucking gigantic. When we were in Singapore, we were doing this stupid game where we had to like keep these balloons in the air, and me and DC started wrestling. He grabbed hold of me, pinned me up against the fence, and holy shit, I could not get my arms around him. You know what I mean? It's like trying to like wrestle with a big gigantic grizzly bear. Never mind that little pipsqueak bear that Khabib was wrestling. DC is a full-grown fucking grizzly. For him to get down to 205, he would have to be the victim of some great white shark attack. He would have to go on the most strenuous ketogenic diet that you've ever fucking seen, and he would be miserable, right? Word on the street is that every time DC shows up to commentate at the UFC Apex, they have to give him the next size jacket up because he's getting big. He's a big old boy, and rightly so. He fucking deserves it, okay? He's all about that cake and chicken, and rightly so. Legendary career, 2 weight division champion. Technically undefeated at light heavyweight. You know what? I'm going to go with that. I'm going to give him that because I agree with him, and fuck all those steroid cheats.
Michael Bisping has every right to be
emotional about this.
Cheated more than anyone in UFC
if
and
you
mixed
take
martial arts.
steroids, you can kiss my ass.
He said I wouldn't fight at heavyweight because I don't deserve a fight at heavyweight. And I understand what he's saying. He defended the belt against Derek Lewis. He knocked out Stipe Miocic, and he lost the last 2 fights against Stipe. Great fights though, they were. First one was fantastic. The second fight, the first loss to Stipe. That was a great fight. Stipe switched things up halfway through, started working the body, got the finish. The next one, the third fight, the last one, that was a very, very competitive fight throughout 5 rounds. So DC certainly can compete. He says, I don't deserve it. Well, guess what? What scenario do you think would happen to get DC to come back and fight at heavyweight? Well, I see the path to that happening very, very easy. Who is coming back to fight at heavyweight later this year? Of course, John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Dana White said at the post-fight press conference on Saturday that he will have an update for everybody very soon of hopefully when that fight will take place. If that's for the interim belt, while Francis Ngannou is out, John Jones, this is hypothetical, and we're assuming if John Jones can come back, if he can beat Stipe Miocic, become the interim champ, then he fights Francis Ngannou, unifies the belts, and becomes undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Do not tell me that Daniel Cormier is going to be sitting there at home. He will probably commentate that fight, see that belt get put around the waist of John Jones, and think, this motherfucker, I owe him one. He has 2 supposed victories against me. He cheated in both of them, okay? And he's been my rival, and they've gone back and forth talking shit the entire time. I think if we ever see John Jones with a heavyweight belt around his waist, that will be the thing to pull Daniel Cormier out of retirement. What do you think? What do you think? Am I way off? I don't know. DC, let me know. If you haven't subscribed to DC's YouTube channel, do yourself a favor and do that. And subscribe to mine before you do that. Anyway, all the best. Take care. See you soon.